different from the community that you are around, especially in politics. Right now, it's very polarized. And if the crowd you hang out with thinks A and you don't think A, you're not going to mention it because you don't want to get into a big fight about it, or maybe you do. But whatever it is, it's going to be a fight versus like having an honest discussion.
Yeah.
And with the internet as well, you put something out there a lot of times, and then, you hear about the intense vitriol of comments and just sort of this anger. And you're like, I don't understand why you need to be so angry. It's a cat video. Like there's literally nothing to be, why did you have to write such angry things? And some people are just like that. And I worry sometimes because you mentioned bravery, and even just now discussing this idea that it's like, we're not all going to get along. The idea of having bravery to perform as an improviser, and also the strength to be able to accept that people might not agree with you and still be able to live next to them, is a rare sort of skill and an unusual thing in the world that we live in. People want to be part of the crowd. And I know that that's probably the case forever and always. And like, they hear this 100 years from now and they're like, yeah, that's what life's like. But, I feel like right now, just in the world, it feels like way more intense. And it just, I don't know, it feels like the efforts that we're making are so... We're trying to be our own people and also let people be who they are, but those people who have the strength to allow for that are few and far between.
Absolutely. Man, isn't that just the crux of everything that's going on right now? I completely agree with you. This is interesting for me because I don't think that I grew up really understanding the idea that everyone wanted to fit in, which is probably one of the reasons why I was very, very bad at fitting in for a long time.
Yeah.
And only a couple of years ago, I was talking with a friend who's also a clergy spouse, but who has had a very different kind of background than I have, and she's absolutely wonderful, but hasn't really been involved in the arts in any significant kind of way. That's not fair to say. She was in UT band and everything, but just a very gentle, sweet person. And we were talking about vulnerabilities in life, and she sort of offhandedly said, well, nobody wants to stand out. And when she said that, a light bulb went off in my brain, and I thought to myself, like, whoa, like, I'm in my 30s, and I have never considered the concept before that maybe most people, or as Maggie has just said, all people want to not stand out.
Yeah.
There was just something inherent about the way that I always was, and somehow the way that I was brought up, that it had not occurred to me that that was a thing. And a lot of things fell into place in my brain in terms of like, oh, that explains a lot, because I seriously grew up, knowing people who are like, my profession is troll. I'm not an internet troll, an actual troll. I put on this troll makeup and then I travel from place to place being a troll.
Yeah.
And that's not a person who was ever trying to not stand out. And if you just think that the world's full of those, then you have a different experience of the world.
Yeah.
And when it comes to community, I'm in a place where I am very, very careful diplomatically with everything I do on the internet.
You have to be.
I can't like most of the articles that agree with any political position, whether it's mine or anyone else's, because we're in a position of trust here.
Yeah.
I think I liked your article that you posted about confirmation bias a while back. But if I did, I thought about it beforehand, because I read things and then I don't click the little thumb.
Yeah.
Most of the time, because we are holding together a community here, a community that can be bristly about political things.
Mm-hmm.
But in our case, it's not a lack of courage. It's so that you have the authority and the ability to turn around and talk to people on a human level about what they really care about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the real stuff happens, you know?
Yeah.
If, for example, you care passionately, like I do, about the rights and lives of LGBTQ people, then you can post an article about that, and it can be liked by all of the people who already agree with you on that, and you can get blocked by people who aren't there on that perspective,
Yep.
or who are uncomfortable with that. Or, in the unique position that we're in, you can wait and have a real conversation with people about what's happening in their life, about what family member is going through what, about what community person makes them uncomfortable, but they still want to embrace them. And a lot gets done, actually done, in terms of everybody coming to accept and love each other.
Yeah.
And so on the internet, I think that we're so low context, we can't imagine who we're talking to. You post something and you think you're talking to, you know, your buddy who agrees with you and is going to give you a high five. But then somebody else is seeing that same thing but has vitriolic language or does a very clear job of demarcating us from them. And they don't see anything other than that they think that you've rejected them personally. And that process keeps compounding itself.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that we try to have the bravery to be ourselves, and that we not ever feel like we have to hide who we are or what we feel. But that doesn't necessarily just mean like blasting things all the time that somebody else wrote about a subject in an attempt to figure out who your people are.
Well, you know, sorry, go ahead.
You know, no, that's all. Go on.
No, I was going to say a prime example is the political climate that we have going on right now. And, you know, I'm not going to say that I'm like a raging fan of the new Pope. There are a few things that I'm like, hey, you know, you should probably back off that. But recently he actually put out a statement saying, all of you, stop it. Just shut up. You all got into office, every one of you, because you said you were trying to be an agent of change. And for you to say that you're an agent of change, yet still carry on like a child and literally call people names and do stuff like this on both sides of the fence, not just in America, but all over the world, you are not being open of heart. You are not listening to your fellow human being, and you're not being an agent of change. So just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Just shut up and listen.
You know, to that point, though, is sometimes I think, is it because I'm getting older that I have the ability, that I have the strength to not tell people what I actually believe? To hold back, because like you said, Shyla, you know, it's a smarter move to wait and have the individual conversations when they need to happen versus, you know, blasting some idea of I have this opinion. And sometimes I get very angry at a bunch of people yelling at each other or at people getting overly upset at something where I'm like, you don't need to get that upset about that.
Yeah.
And living in the world the circle of people that I live in, I spend most of my time with people in their 20s, right? Early 20s, right? So I usually chalk it up to, oh, well, they're young. But the problem is the internet is not just 20-year-olds. It's everyone of all different ages. And a lot of times the people who are starting the fights on like Facebook or whatever are old people who are like 60, 70, people who have been causing, like people who cause trouble age and they keep causing trouble forever.
Well, a prime example, Dudes and Beer is, of course, going to Meekum. And the one comment that we got on our Dudes and Beer event was literally an anti-Semitic message. Meekum is an auto auction.
Yeah, for like classic cars.
Yeah.
Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Like, what does this have to do with the Jewish people? Mr. I don't know you, you're not my friend, you're not part of our group. Literally just this random, and I have a screenshot of it, and I went and I blocked the person and reported them to Facebook and sent them a screenshot, and then I deleted the comment. But I kept the picture because it's one of those like, oh my God, like what? We've had episodes that are literally banned in like Iraq because it started with Dr. Feelgood and the topic was FDA releases chewable Adderall for 6-year-olds. Stuff like that, where we talk about hard topics and have an open discussion about them because that's what the world needs. But dude, this is an auto auction. Why did that one?
Why is this the one?
Why is this one the target of the vitriol here?
Yeah.
Where did this even come from? and who's the person that is offending you? Is it me or is it Meekum? Like, you didn't even make your intentions clear. You just threw an anti-Semitic message out there on some random post in hopes that thousands of people would see it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, too. Sometimes I'm like, hey, hate if you'd like, but be a little more direct if you could, hey. Yeah. If you have a good point, go right ahead and say what you need to say. But if you're not going to make sense, I don't want to hear what you have to do.
And it's literally, for me, the concept of, number one, and you've heard me say it a lot, I say it a lot on my show, we've created this concept that these social media things are our private domain. They're not. They're not. People get fired by them all the time.
Yeah.
People get thrown in jail for them. I mean, I had to tell a friend of mine that was on paper in the city of Houston who was posting pictures, on paper. For those of you that aren't hip on listening to this show means you're on probation.
I'm not hip.
So,
thank you for explaining.
Someone that's on probation, not supposed to leave the Tri-County area, and they're posting pictures of themselves at ACL. And I'm like, no, get rid of those. Like, you are showing active probation violation on your social media page. Why do you think they ask you for your email?
Yeah.
They are actively keeping track of you, man. Don't do that. Even with Dudes and Beer, because of the things that we discuss and because there's alcohol involved, and we get passionate sometimes. The whole concept was that our country was born from a bunch of dudes sitting around in a bar, drinking, talking about religion, politics, economics. And what are we socially taught now? In any social circumstance, do not talk about religion, politics, economics. And we wonder why we have no discussion in our world. This is like at the dinner table. This is what used to be talked about. And this is what got the world to places. And now we've created this society of silence, of keep your opinion to yourself. Don't say anything in mixed company because you might offend someone, when really all that does is stop all dialogue.
No, but the thing is, though, that's kind of what we're talking about as I appreciate your point of view to why you guys have your discussion and why you put it out there on the internet for people to feel like they can have that discussion. But the whole discussion we've been having thus far is about tempering yourself and not putting too many things out there because the world is so ready to be lit on fire that any word out of your mouth is a match or is loaded with gasoline.
And that's why before anybody comes on the show, they sign that little disclaimer that says, I'm not editing this. If you say anything that may offend your boss, that may get you in trouble at work, that might get you in trouble with your kid's teacher at school.
Yeah, but that doesn't...
Just don't say it.
That doesn't actually... That's not but the idea of that is essentially like, if you're going to screw yourself, you're going to screw yourself. Good luck to you. But the issue is, the issue that we're discussing has more to do with the fact that it's like, as adults and as